In our last episode, we found out, along with Robin Wednesbury, to what lengths Foyle was willing to go to keep his secret safe. Jaunting to her own home ahead of her to meet her, he gloated over knowing her secret, that she had family in the outer planets, making her, by law, an enemy of Terra and potentially subject to arrest and torture as a spy. Indeed, she dared say nothing to authorities about Foyle's malingering, nor about the physical abuse she was now suffering at his hands. We were then introduced to Presteign of Presteign, the wealthiest man on Terra, so wealthy and important that he had not jaunted in 40 years, relying on obsolete forms of transportation and communication, as was the custom for those who could afford it. We were also introduced to Presteign's daughter Olivia as she holds court, an albino woman with the distinct feature of being blind to ordinary light, but able to see in the infrared. It turns out Presteign has an interest in Foyle. There was important cargo aboard the Nomad that he was desperate to retrieve, and Foyle was the only man who could lead him to it. Little did he know that his path would cross Foyle's on that very day when Presteign was due to christen a new spaceship, the Presteign Princess. Foyle had chosen that same hour to make his assault on the Vorga, which was docked nearby in Presteign's shipyard. After breaching security and failing to blow up his target, Foyle was captured, and Presteign, reveling in the power of his security apparatus, at the last minute instead christened the ship the Presteign Power, without even realizing yet that the prisoner before him was the very man he sought. We will find out what Presteign has in store for Foyle in episode 4 of The Stars My Destination by Alfred Bester. The star chamber in Castle Presteign was an oval room with ivory panels picked out with gold, high mirrors, and stained glass windows. It contained a gold organ with robust organist by Tiffany, a gold-tooled library with Android librarian on library ladder, a Louis Ken's desk with Android secretary before a manual memo bead recorder, an American bar with robot bartender. Presteign would have preferred human servants, but androids and robots kept secrets.
Be seated, Captain Yeovil. This is Mr. Regis Sheffield representing me in this matter. The young woman is Mr. Sheffield's assistant.
What is my portable law library?
Presteign touched a control. The still life in the star chamber came alive. The organist played, the librarian sorted books, the secretary typed, the bartender shook drinks. It was spectacular, and the impact, carefully calculated by industrial psychometrists, established control for Presteign and put visitors at a disadvantage.
You spoke of a man named Foyle, Captain Yeovil.
Captain Peter Yang Yeovil of Central Intelligence was a lineal descendant of the learned Mencius and belonged to the intelligence tong of the inner planet's armed forces. For 200 years, the IPAF had entrusted its intelligence work to the Chinese, who, with a 5,000-year history of cultivated subtlety behind them, had achieved wonders. Captain Yang Yeovil was a member of the dreaded Society of Paper Men, an adept of the Tianjin image makers, a master of superstition, and fluent in the secret speech. He did not look Chinese. Yang Yeovil hesitated, fully aware of the psychological pressures operating against him. He examined Prestein's ascetic basilisk face, Sheffield's blunt, aggressive expression, and the eager young woman named Bunny, whose rabbit features had an unmistakable Asian cast. It was necessary for Yeovil to reestablish control or effect a compromise. He opened with a flanking movement.
Are we related anywhere within 15 degrees of consanguinity?
He asked Bunny in the Mandarin dialect.
I am of the house of the learned Menci. whom the barbarians call Mencius.
Then we are hereditary enemies.
Bunny answered in faltering Mandarin.
For the formidable answer of my line was deposed as governor of Jaunting in 342 BC by the earth pig Mansi.
With all courtesy, I shave your ill-formed eyebrows.
Most respectfully, I singe your snaggled teeth.
Come, sirs.
We are reaffirming a 3,000-year blood feud.
Yang Yovel explained to Presteign, who looked sufficiently unsettled by the conversation and the laughter which he did not understand. He tried a direct thrust.
When will you be finished with Foyle?
What Foyle?
What foil have you got?
There are 13 of that name associated with the clan Presteign.
An interesting number. Did you know I was a master of superstition? Someday I must show you the mirror and listen mystery. I refer to the foil involved in a reported attempt on Mr. Presteign's life this morning.
Presteign, I am not Mr. I am Presteign of Presteign.
3 attempts have been made on Presteign's life. You'll have to be more specific.
3 this morning? Presteign must have been busy.
Sheffield was proving himself a resolute opponent. The intelligence man tried another diversion.
I do wish our Mr. Presto had been more specific.
You're Mr. Presto?
Oh, yes. Didn't you know one of your 500 Prestos was an agent of ours? That's odd. We took it for granted you'd find out and went ahead with a confusion operation.
Presteign looked appalled. Yang Yovel crossed his legs and continued to chat breezily.
That's the basic weakness in routine intelligence procedure. You start finessing before finesse is required.
He's bluffing. None of our Prestos could possibly have any knowledge of Gulliver Foyle.
Thank you.
Yang Yovel smiled.
That's the foil I want. When can you let us have him?
Sheffield scowled at Presteign and then turned on Yang Yovel.
Who's us?
Central Intelligence.
Why do you want him?
Do you make love to a woman before or after you take your clothes off?
That's a damned important question to ask.
And so was yours. When can you let us have Foyle?
When you show cause.
To whom?
To me.
Sheffield hammered a heavy forefinger against his palm.
This is a civilian matter concerning civilians. Unless war material, war personnel, or the strategy and tactics of a warring being are involved, civilian jurisdiction shall always prevail.
303, Terran Appeals 191.
The Nomad was carrying war material.
The Nomad was transferring platinum bullion to Mars Bank. If money is,
I'm leading this discussion.
Sheffield swung around on Yang Yovel.
Name the war material.
This blunt challenge knocked Yang Yovel off balance. He knew that the crux of the Nomad situation was the presence on board the ship of 20 pounds of pyre, the total world supply, which was probably irreplaceable now that its discoverer had disappeared. He knew that Sheffield knew that they both knew this. He had assumed that Sheffield would prefer to keep pyre unnamed. And yet, here was the challenge to name the unnameable. He attempted to meet bluntness with bluntness.
All right, gentlemen, I'll name it now. The Nomad was transporting 20 pounds of a substance called pyre.
Presteign started. Sheffield silenced him.
What's pyre?
According to our reports,
From Presteign's Mr. Presto.
Oh, that was a bluff.
Yang Yovel momentarily regained control.
According to intelligence, pyre was developed for Presteign by a man who subsequently disappeared. Pyre is a mish metal, a pyrophore. That's all we know for a fact. But we've had vague reports about it. Unbelievable reports from reputable agents. If a fraction of our inferences is correct, pyre could make the difference between a victory and a defeat.
Nonsense. No war material has ever made that much difference.
No, I cite the fission bomb of 1945. I cite the null G anti-gravity installations of 2022. Talley's all-field radar trip screen of 2194. Material can often make the difference, especially when there's a chance of the enemy getting it first.
There's no such chance now.
Thank you for admitting the importance of pyre.
I admit nothing. I deny everything.
Central Intelligence is prepared to offer an exchange. A man for a man, the inventor of pyre for gully foil.
The inventor of pyre? You've got him? Then why badger us for foil?
Because we've got a corpse. The outer satellites command had him on a cell for 6 months trying to carve information out of him. We pulled him out with a raid at a cost of 79% casualties. We rescued a corpse. We still don't know if the outer satellites were having a cynical laugh at our expense, letting us recapture a body. We still don't know how much they ripped out of him.
Presteign sat bolt upright at this. His merciless fingers tapped slowly and sharply.
Damn it! Can't you recognize a crisis, Sheffield? We're on a tightrope. What the devil are you doing backing Presteign in the shabby deal? You're the leader of the Liberal Party, Terra's arch patriot. You're Prestein's political arch enemy. Sell him out, you fool, before he sells us all out.
Captain Yeovil, these expressions cannot be countenanced.
We want and need pyre. We'll have to investigate those 20 pounds of pyre, rediscover the synthesis, learn to apply it to the war effort, and all this before the OS beats us to the punch, if they haven't already. But Presteign refuses to cooperate. Why? Because he's opposed to the party in power. He wants no military victories for the liberals. He'd rather we lost the war for the sake of politics, because rich men like Presteign never lose. Come to your senses, Sheffield. You've been retained by a traitor. What in God's name are you trying to do?
Before Sheffield could answer, there was a discreet tap on the door of the star chamber, and Saul Dagenham was ushered in. Time was when Dagenham was one of the inner planet's research wizards, a physicist with inspired intuition, total recall, and a sixth-order computer for a brain. But there was an accident at Tycho Sands, and the fission blast that should have killed him did not. Instead, it turned him dangerously radioactive. It turned him hot. It transformed him into a 24th century typhoid Mary. He was paid $25,000 a year by the inner planet's government to take precautions which they trusted him to carry out. He avoided physical contact with any person for more than 5 minutes per day. He could not occupy any room other than his own for more than 30 minutes a day. Commanded and paid by the IP to isolate himself, Dagenham had abandoned research and built the colossus of Dagenham Couriers Incorporated. When Yang Yovel saw the short blonde cadaver with leaden skin and death's head smile enter the star chamber, he knew he was assured of defeat in this encounter. He was no match for the three men together. He arose at once.
I'm getting an admiralty order for Foyle. As far as intelligence is concerned, all negotiations are ended. From now on, it's war.
Presteign called to the Jaunt Watch officer who had guided Dagenham in.
Captain Yeovil is leaving. Please see him out through the maze.
Yang Yeovil waited until the officer stepped alongside him and bowed. Then, as the man courteously motioned to the door, Yang Yeovil looked directly at Presteign, smiled ironically, and disappeared with a faint.
Presteign, he jaunted. This room isn't blind to him.
Evidently, inform the master of the household. The coordinates of the star chamber are no longer secret. They must be changed within 24 hours. And now, Mr. Dagenham.
1 minute. There's that admiralty order.
Without apology or explanation, he disappeared too. Presteign raised his eyebrows.
Another party to the star chamber secret, but at least he had the tact to conceal his knowledge until the secret was out.
Dagenham reappeared.
No point wasting time going through the motions of the maze. I've given orders in Washington. They'll hold Yeovil up 2 hours, guaranteed. 3 hours, probably. 4 hours, possible.
How will they hold him up?
Dagenham gave her his deadly smile.
Standard FFCC operation of Dagenham couriers. Fun, fantasy, confusion, catastrophe. We'll need all 4 hours. Damn, I've disrupted your dolls, Presteign.
The robots were suddenly capering in lunatic fashion as Dagenham's hard radiation penetrated their electronic systems.
No matter. I'll be on my way.
Foyle?
Dagenham grinned his death's head smile.
Nothing yet. He's really unique. I've tried all the standard drugs and routines on him. Nothing. Outside, he's just an ordinary spaceman, if you forget the tattoo on his face. But inside, he's got steel guts. Something's got hold of him, and he won't give.
What's got a hold of him?
I hope to find out.
How?
Don't ask. You'd be an accessory. Have you got a ship ready, Presteign?
Presteign nodded.
I'm not guaranteeing there'll be any Nomad for us to find, but we'll have to get a jump on the Navy if there is. Law ready, Sheffield?
Ready. I'm hoping we won't have to use it.
I'm hoping too. But again, I'm not guaranteeing. All right. Stand by for instructions. I'm on my way to crack Foyle.
Where have you got him?
Dagenham shook his head.
This room isn't secure.
He disappeared. He jaunted Cincinnati, New Orleans, Monterey to Mexico City, where he appeared in the psychiatry wing of the giant hospital of the combined Terra universities. Wing was hardly an adequate name for this section, which occupied an entire city in the metropolis which was the hospital. Dagenham jaunted up to the 43rd floor of the therapy division and looked into the isolated tank where Foyle floated unconscious. He glanced at the distinguished bearded gentleman in attendance.
Hello, Fritz.
Hello, Saul.
Hell of a thing. The head of psychiatry minding a patient for me.
I think we owe you favors, Saul.
You still brooding about Tycho Sands, Fritz? I'm not. Am I lousing your wing with radiation?
I've had everything shielded.
Ready for the dirty work?
I wish I knew what you were after.
Information.
And you have to turn my therapy department into an inquisition to get it?
That was the idea.
Why not use ordinary drugs?
Tried them already. No good. He's not an ordinary man.
You know this is illegal.
I know. Changed your mind? Want back out? I can duplicate your equipment for $250,000.
No, Saul. We always owe you favors.
Then let's go. Nightmare Theater first.
They trundled the tank down a corridor and into 100 feet square padded room. It was one of therapy's bypassed experiments. Nightmare Theater had been an early attempt to shock schizophrenics back into the objective world by rendering the fantasy world into which they were withdrawing uninhabitable. But the shattering and laceration of patients' emotions had proved to be too cruel and dubious a treatment. For Dagenham's sake, the head of psychiatry had dusted off the 3D visual projectors and reconnected all sensory projectors. They decanted Foyle from his tank, gave him a reviving shot, and left him in the middle of the floor. They removed the tank, turned off the lights, and entered the concealed control booth. There, they turned on the projectors. Every child in the world imagines that its fantasy world is unique to itself. Psychiatry knows that the joys and terrors of private fantasies are a common heritage shared by all mankind. Fears, guilts, terrors, and shames could be interchanged from one man to the next, and none would notice the difference. The therapy department at Combined Hospital had recorded thousands of emotional tapes and boiled them down to one all-inclusive, all-terrifying performance in Nightmare Theater. Foyle awoke, panting and sweating, and never knew that he had awakened. He was in the clutch of the serpent-haired, bloody-eyed Eumenides. He was pursued, entrapped, precipitated from heights, burned, flayed, bowstringed, vermin-covered, devoured. He screamed. He ran. The radar hobble field in the theater clogged his steps and turned them into the ghastly slow motion of dream running. And through the cacophony of grinding, shrieking, moaning, pursuing that assailed his ears, muttered the thread of a persistent voice.
Where is Nomad? Where is Nomad? Where is Nomad? Where is Nomad? Where is Nomad?
Vorga. Vorga.
He had been inoculated by his own fixation. His own nightmare had rendered him immune.
Where is Nomad? Where have you left Nomad? What happened to Nomad? Where is Nomad?
Vorga. 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 Vorga.
In the control booth, Dagenham swore. The head of psychiatry, monitoring the projectors, glanced at the clock.
1 minute and 45 seconds, Saul. He can't stand much more.
He's got to break. Give him the final effect.
They buried Foyle alive, slowly, inexorably, hideously. He was carried down into black depths and enclosed in stinking slime that cut off light and air. He slowly suffocated while a distant voice boomed.
Where is Nomad? Where have you left Nomad? You can escape if you find Nomad. Where is Nomad?
But Foyle was back aboard Nomad in his lightless, airless coffin, floating comfortably between deck and roof. He curled into a tight fetal ball and prepared to sleep. He was content. He would escape. He would find Vorga.
Impervious bastard! Has anyone ever resisted nightmare theater before, Fritz?
Not many, you're right. That's an uncommon man, Saul.
He's got to be ripped open. All right, to hell with any more of this. We'll try the Migo mood next. Are the actors ready?
Already.
Then let's go.
There are 6 directions in which delusions of grandeur can run. The megal, short for megalomania, mood, was therapy's dramatic diagnosis technique for establishing and plotting the particular course of megalomania. Foyle awoke in a luxurious 4-poster bed. He was in a bedroom hung with brocade, papered in velvet. He glanced around curiously. Soft sunlight filtered through latticed windows. Across the room, a valet was quietly laying out clothes.
Hey,
The valet turned.
Good morning, Mr. Fourmile.
what?
It's a lovely morning, sir. I've laid out the brown twill and the cordovan pumps, sir.
What's the matter, you?
The valet gazed at Foyle curiously.
I've. Is anything wrong, Mr. Fourmile?
What you call me, man?
By your name, sir?
My name is 4 Mile?
Foyle struggled up in the bed.
No, it's not. It's Foyle. Gully Foyle, that's my name, me.
The valet bit his lip.
Uh, One moment, sir.
He stepped outside and called. Then he murmured. The lovely woman in white came running into the bedroom and sat down on the edge of the bed. She took Foyle's hand and gazed into his eyes. Her face was distressed.
Darling, darling, you aren't going to start all that again, are you? The doctor swore you were over it.
Not what again?
All that Gulliver Foyle nonsense about your being a common sailor
I
and,
am Gully Foyle. That's my name, Gully Foyle.
sweetheart, you're not. That's just a delusion you've had for weeks. You've been overworking and drinking too much.
Been Gully Foyle all my life, me.
Yes, I know, darling. That's the way it seemed to you, but you're not. You're Geoffrey Fourmile. The Geoffrey Fourmile. Oh, what's the sense telling you? Get dressed, my love. You've got to come downstairs. Your office has been frantic.
Foyle permitted the valet to dress him and went downstairs in a daze. The lovely woman, who evidently adored him, conducted him through a giant studio littered with drawing tables, easels, and half-finished canvases. She took him into a vast hall filled with desks, filing cabinets, stock tickers, clerks, secretaries, office personnel. They entered a lofty laboratory cluttered with glass and chrome. Burners flickered and hissed. Bright-colored liquids bubbled and churned. There was a pleasant odor of interesting chemicals and odd experiments.
What's all this?
The woman seated Foyle in a plush armchair alongside a giant desk littered with interesting papers scribbled with fascinating symbols. On some, Foyle saw the name, Geoffrey Fourmile, scrawled in an imposing authoritative signature.
There's some kind of crazy mistake, is all.
The woman silenced him.
Here's Dr. Reagan. She'll explain.
An impressive woman with a crisp, comforting manner came to Foyle, touched his pulse, inspected his eyes, and nodded in satisfaction.
Good. Excellent. You are close to complete recovery, Mr. Fourmile. Now you will listen to me for a moment,
Foyle nodded.
You remember nothing of the past. You have only a false memory. You were overworked. You are an important man, and there were too many demands on you. You started to drink heavily a month ago. No, denial is useless. You drank. You lost yourself.
Right.
You became convinced you were not the famous Jeff Fourmile, an infantile attempt to escape responsibility. You imagined you were a common spaceman named Foyle, Gulliver Foyle, yes, with an odd number.
Gully Foyle, AS128127006. But that's me. That's who I am.
No, it's not you. This is you.
Dr. Reagan waved at the interesting offices they could see through the transparent glass wall.
You can only recapture the true memory if you discharge the old. All this glorious reality is yours if we can help you discard the dream of the spaceman.
Dr. Reagan leaned forward, her polished spectacles glittering hypnotically.
Reconstruct this false memory of yours in detail, and I will tear it down. Where do you imagine you left the spaceship Nomad? How did you escape? Where do you imagine the Nomad is now?
Foyle wavered before the romantic glamour of the scene, which seemed to be just within his grasp.
It seems to me I left Nomad out.
He stopped short. A devil face peered at him from the highlights reflected in Dr. Reagan's spectacles. A hideous tiger mask with Nomad blazoned across the distorted brow. Foyle stood up.
Liars! It's real me. This here is phony. What happened to me is real. It's real me.
Saul Dagenham walked into the laboratory.
All right, strike. It's a washout.
End of episode 4.